fin. Il reste encore beaucoup de kilomètres pour gagner la lutte. Est-ce que vous êtes encore déterminés?
In the UK, the recent French protests have been met with bewilderment. We ask, why are the French making such a fuss when they have it so much better than the rest of Europe? Of course, what this line of argument misses is the strong link between the two. If you don't fight for your rights, you lose them, as we are learning the hard way in England. To see how the French are fighting the reforms, the New Journal visited Paris for the May Day demos taking place on May the 1st. In mid-April, French President Emmanuel Macron used a controversial piece of legislation that allowed him to push through his pension reforms without a vote in the French Parliament. The changes will see the retirement age rise from 62 to 64 and increase the number of years workers have to contribute to the system before they can withdraw their full pension. For many in France, a strong pension system forms the backbone of the social contract, much like the NHS does for us in England. In response, huge numbers of people have taken to the streets in protest, and they have been met with increasingly repressive force by the French police, who arrive in riot kit wielding truncheons and tear gas. As a result, many onlookers feel the reforms signal the erosion of two fundamental rights underwritten by the French Constitution, the right to democracy and the right to assembly. And for many in France, the pension reforms have also become a symbol of the condition of the country, as the welfare state is eroded, democracy is undermined, and protest is met with militarised violence. The Fete du Travail, held every May Day, is an important public holiday for the French. Every year a manifestation, half carnival, half demonstration, weaves its way across the capital. This year, May Day was particularly charged. According to the CGT Union, 2.3 million protesters came out across the country, with 550,000 descending on the capital. Protesters arrived wearing gilets jaunes, the symbol of a French working-class uprising, sparked by rising fuel costs in 2018. Others came holding pots and pans which they hit with wooden spoons. Meanwhile, the unions brought their bands and speaker systems, and the Black Bloc anarchists arrived dressed all in black with their faces covered. Feminists wearing red rosettes were there to point out that reforms will have a disproportionate impact on women, who will no longer be given pension credits for every child they have. An Extinction Rebellion was there in force, with some climbers even scaling the huge statue of the Marianne to wrap her in a t-shirt warning of the ongoing ecological crisis. The French government has justified the reforms by suggesting that the current pension system could be as much as 150 billion euros in debt within the next decade. Others put the figure at closer to 10 billion euros. But protesters ask why this money can't be found elsewhere, pointing to the fact Macron has reversed the wealth tax on financial portfolios, money that could otherwise have helped reduce this billion-euro deficit.
Allez, 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 on manif fortière, on manif fortière. Allez, 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 on résiste des terres, on résiste des terres. Allez, 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 allez.
Allez, 10 secondes de récup et on part.
The pessimists might argue that France offers a vision of the future for many countries in the West. For European nations strapped with ageing populations, flatlining productivity and stagnating wages, a healthy welfare state is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain, particularly when leaders are reluctant to tax extreme wealth. In England, protest is often quietly repressed using the law, as the legality of large, so-called disruptive gatherings are brought into question, the recent environmental and anti-monarchy protests being a case in point. On both sides of the channel, the implication is that instead of dealing with the root causes of decline, those in charge will opt for short-term fixes, bypassing the democratic process and using a range of measures to repress resistance. Heavily featured in the school curriculum, the revolution lives on in the collective imagination of the French and still serves as a reference point for many across the country. Of course, England has a radical history of its own, albeit one that is rarely taught in schools, from the poll tax riots of 1990 to the miners' strikes of the 1970s and, further back, to the suffragettes, the Tolpuddle martyrs and the Chartists. Recent events in France have driven some workers to consider new strategies for blocking Macron's reforms. Some question the efficacy of traditional forms of resistance, such as the marches, and call for more wide-reaching action. A similar question is being asked in England. As sweeping new police powers are introduced under the Public Order Bill, protesters are now liable to face a 6-month prison term or a fine for anything deemed more than a minor disruption. In all discussions, there is a strange blend of defeatism and optimism at work. Amid the uncertainty, we should take courage from the French